Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewport. 3 years had passed since humans first met the Zalakians, and everything had gone wrong from that first day. What should have been a peaceful meeting between two space-traveling species had turned into a bloody war that spread across multiple star systems. Now Jake found himself commanding one of humanity's largest colony ships while trying to avoid enemy patrols in the dangerous Outer Rim territories. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional beep from navigation controls. Jake's crew of 47 worked efficiently around him as they traveled through empty space toward their new colony world. Most of them were tired from months of careful travel through contested space, but they trusted Jake to get them safely to their destination, Lisa. Grant, his security chief, walked up to him with a worried expression on her face. She was a tough woman who had served in the military before joining the colony mission, and Jake valued her honest opinions about dangerous situations. Lisa never hesitated to tell him when she thought he was making risky decisions, and today looked like one of those times. "Captain, we're picking up something strange on long-range sensors," Lisa said while handing him a datapad with sensor readings. "There's a ship out there about 2 hours away at our current speed, and it's not moving at all." Jake looked at the readings and felt his stomach tighten with worry. The ship's energy signature was definitely Zalakian, which meant they had found an enemy vessel in the middle of nowhere. Standard military orders were clear about situations like this. Avoid contact with enemy ships and report their position to Fleet Command for possible military action. "Any signs of weapons or communications from the ship?" Jake asked while studying the data more carefully. "Nothing, Captain," Lisa replied. "The ship appears to be completely dead in space. No weapons active, no communications, and very weak life support readings. If there are any Zalakians alive over there, they won't be for much longer." Jake handed the datapad back to Lisa and walked over to the main sensor station where his science officer Kevin Park was running more detailed scans of the mysterious vessel. Kevin was young but brilliant with technology and had saved their lives more than once during dangerous encounters with space pirates and hostile environments. "What do you think, Kevin?" Jake asked. "Could this be some kind of trap?" Kevin shook his head while pointing at his screen. "I don't think so, Captain. The damage patterns on their hull suggest they were attacked by someone else, maybe pirates or raiders. There are holes in their armor, and their main power systems are failing. If this is a trap, it's a very expensive one." Jake thought about his options while watching the weak signals coming from the Zalakian ship. Military protocol said he should mark the location and continue on their mission without getting involved. But something about the situation bothered him. The ship was obviously in serious trouble, and if there were survivors, they would die soon without help. "Captain," said Sam Carter, their chief medical officer, as she joined the group around the sensor station. Sam was one of the most caring people Jake had ever met, and she never hesitated to help anyone who needed medical attention, regardless of who they were. "I'm reading very faint life signs from that ship. Someone over there is still alive, but barely." Lisa stepped closer to Jake with a firm expression. "Captain, I know what you're thinking, but we can't risk the safety of this entire ship and crew for unknown Zalakians. There are enemies, and helping them could be seen as treason by Fleet Command." Jake understood Lisa's concerns because they were valid and reasonable. The war had cost both sides thousands of lives, and many humans had very strong feelings against helping any Zalakians for any reason. But Jake also knew that leaving survivors to die in space went against everything he believed about human decency and moral responsibility. "Prepare a small boarding party," Jake said after several minutes of difficult thinking. "Sam, you're with me along with 2 security officers. Lisa, you have command while we're gone." "Captain, this is a mistake," Lisa said firmly. "We don't know what's waiting for us over there, and we could be walking into a trap that gets us all killed." Jake looked at his security chief with understanding. "You might be right, Lisa, but I can't live with myself if we let people die when we have the power to help them. Sometimes being human means taking risks for the right reasons." The boarding party prepared quickly while New Horizon moved closer to the damaged Zalakian vessel. Jake put on his environmental suit and checked his oxygen levels and emergency supplies. Sam packed medical equipment that might work with alien biology, while their security escort prepared weapons and scanning equipment for potential dangers. As they approached the Zalakian ship in their small shuttle, Jake could see the extensive damage to its hull. Large holes had been burned through the armor plating, and several sections were completely destroyed. Whoever had attacked this ship had been thorough and brutal in their assault. "Life signs are getting weaker, Captain," Sam reported from her medical scanner. "We need to hurry if we're going to save anyone." The shuttle docked with the Zalakian ship through an emergency airlock that was barely functional. Jake led the way inside with his weapon ready, while Sam followed with her medical equipment. The interior of the ship was dark and filled with floating debris from the attack. They found the first Zalakian bodies near the bridge area. Jake had seen dead Zalakians before during the war, but it was still disturbing to see the results of such violence up close. These aliens looked very different from humans with their tall, thin bodies and pale blue skin, but they were clearly intelligent beings who had died defending their ship. "Captain, over here," Sam called from deeper inside the vessel. "I found the source of the life signs." Jake followed Sam's voice through a damaged corridor until they reached what appeared to be a cargo area. There, underneath a pile of twisted metal debris, they found a small Zalakian child trapped and barely conscious. The child looked to be very young with the same pale blue skin as the adults, but much smaller and more fragile. "She's dying, Captain," Sam said while scanning the child with her medical equipment. "Her life support systems are failing and she's been without proper oxygen for too long." Jake looked at the trapped child and made a decision that would change everything. He began removing pieces of debris while Sam prepared emergency medical supplies. The child's eyes opened briefly and looked directly at Jake with an expression of fear and pain that transcended species differences. "I need more oxygen for her," Sam said urgently. "Her biology is similar enough to ours that human oxygen might work, but she needs a lot more than what's in my emergency supplies." Jake looked at his own environmental suit and the oxygen recycling system that kept him alive in space. Without hesitation, he began disconnecting his primary oxygen supply to create a makeshift life support system for the dying alien child. It was a dangerous gamble that would leave him with only emergency reserves, but he couldn't watch an innocent child die when he had the power to save her. Jake woke up in the medical bay of New Horizon 3 days after the rescue mission. His head felt heavy and his breathing was still somewhat difficult from the oxygen deprivation he had experienced while saving the Zalakian child. Sam Carter sat beside his bed reviewing medical charts and monitoring his recovery progress with careful attention. "How long was I unconscious?" Jake asked while trying to sit up in his hospital bed. 3 days, Captain," Sam replied while helping him adjust his position. "You came very close to permanent brain damage from lack of oxygen. Giving up your life support system for that child was incredibly brave but also incredibly dangerous." Jake remembered the moment when he had made that decision aboard the damaged Zalakian vessel. He had seen the dying child trapped under debris and known immediately that he could not leave her to die alone in space. The choice had been automatic and instinctive rather than carefully planned. "How is she doing?" Jake asked. "Did the child survive?" Sam smiled for the first time since Jake had awakened. "She's alive and getting stronger every day. We've set up a special medical area for her with modified life support systems. Her name is Kira, and she's been asking about you constantly." Jake felt relief wash over him as he learned that his sacrifice had been worthwhile. Saving one innocent life felt more important than following military orders that would have left the child to die, but he also knew that keeping an enemy alien aboard a human colony ship would create serious problems with Fleet Command and possibly his own crew. "What's the crew's reaction to having her aboard?" Jake asked. Sam's expression became more serious. "Mixed reactions, Captain. Some people understand why you saved her and support your decision. Others are worried about security risks and possible retaliation from Zalakian forces. Lisa has been dealing with several complaints and concerns from crew members." Over the next few days, Jake slowly recovered his strength while learning more about their unexpected passenger. Dr. Elena Martinez, their xenobiologist, had been working with Kira to establish basic communication and understand Zalakian biology better. Elena was fascinated by the opportunity to study an alien species up close in a peaceful setting. Her species is remarkably similar to humans in many ways, Elena explained to Jake during one of his recovery sessions. They breathe oxygen, have similar nutritional needs, and even show emotional responses that we can recognize. But their culture appears to be very different from ours. Jake visited Kira for the first time a week after the rescue mission. The child was staying in a modified cargo bay that had been converted into a temporary living space with appropriate life support systems. When Jake entered the room, Kira looked up at him, with large dark eyes that showed intelligence and curiosity rather than fear. Kira spoke to him in her native Zelakian language, which the ship's computer was slowly learning to translate. The translation was rough and incomplete, but Jake could understand basic concepts and emotions. Kira seemed to recognize him as the person who had saved her life and showed what appeared to be gratitude and trust. She keeps asking about her family. Elena translated during one of their communication sessions. I think she understands that her parents are dead, but she doesn't fully comprehend what that means for her future. Jake felt deep sadness for the orphaned child who had lost everything in the pirate attack that destroyed her family's ship. War had made enemies of their species, but Kira was just an innocent child who deserved protection and care regardless of politics and military conflicts. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks had been receiving regular communications from Fleet Command, demanding updates on their mission status. The military leadership was becoming suspicious about why New Horizon had delayed their arrival at the colony world and why they had changed course through the Outer Rim territories. We can't keep this secret much longer, Captain, Ryan warned during a private meeting in Jake's quarters. Fleet Command is asking specific questions about our route and mission timeline. If they discover we're harboring an enemy alien, there will be serious consequences for everyone involved. Jake knew that Ryan was right about the dangers they faced from their own military leadership, but he also believed that protecting an innocent child was more important than following orders that violated basic human decency. The decision to save Kira had been the right choice regardless of potential consequences. Dr. Martinez made an important discovery during her third week of working with Kira. While studying Zelakian cultural information that Kira had shared, she learned about something called the HFY system that governed Zelakian social relationships and family obligations. Captain, this is fascinating, Elena explained while showing Jake her research notes. The Zelakians have a complex honor system that creates permanent bonds between families when certain actions are performed. Saving a child's life when it requires personal sacrifice creates something called Veltheran, which is the highest form of life debt in their culture. Jake listened carefully as Elena explained what she had learned about Zelakian customs and social structures. According to Kira's explanations, the act of risking one's life to save a Zelakian child created obligations and relationships that lasted for generations. The person who performed such a rescue became permanently connected to the child's family, with rights and responsibilities that went far beyond simple gratitude. What does that mean practically? Jake asked. I'm not entirely sure yet, Elena admitted, but it appears to be much more significant than just saying thank you. Kira talks about it as if you've become part of her family in some permanent way. She seems to believe that her remaining family members will want to meet you and honor what you did. This information worried Jake because it suggested that the rescue mission might have consequences that extended far beyond simply saving one child's life. If Kira's family was still alive somewhere, they might come looking for her, which could create dangerous situations. For New Horizon and its crew, Jake's concerns proved justified when long-range sensors detected a single ship approaching their position at high speed 3 weeks after the rescue mission. The vessel was clearly Zelakian in design, but it was broadcasting on diplomatic frequencies rather than military channels. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the approaching ship, Kevin reported from the communication station. It's in Zelakian language, but our translation systems are getting better at understanding their speech patterns. The message was simple and direct. The pilot identified herself as Commander Zara Veltar and claimed to be Kira's mother. She had survived the pirate attack that killed the rest of her family, but had been seriously injured and left for dead. After recovering from her wounds, she had spent weeks searching for any trace of her missing daughter. Jake felt his heart race as he realized that Kira's mother was still alive and had tracked them down. This changed everything about their situation because they were no longer just protecting an orphaned child. They now had to deal with a Zelakian military commander who had come to reclaim her daughter from the humans who had saved her. She's requesting permission to come aboard, Kevin continued translating. She says she comes in peace and only wants to see her child and thank the person who saved Kira's life. Lisa Grant immediately opposed allowing any Zelakian aboard their ship. Captain, this could be a trap. We don't know if she's really the child's mother or if she's brought other ships with her. Letting an enemy commander aboard our vessel violates every security protocol we have. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew members who were all waiting for his decision. Some faces showed fear, while others showed curiosity about meeting a Zelakian adult for the first time. The choice he made now would determine whether this encounter led to violence or perhaps something entirely different. Allow her to dock with one small shuttle, Jake decided, but maintain full security protocols and be ready for anything. Commander Zara Veltar's shuttle docked with New Horizon under heavy guard from Lisa Grant's security team. Jake waited in the main cargo bay that had been chosen as the meeting location, because it offered the most space and security options if things went wrong. His heart pounded as he prepared to meet his first adult Zalakian face-to-face in a situation that wasn't combat. When the airlock opened, Jake was surprised by what he saw. Zara was tall like other Zalakians, but she carried herself with obvious military bearing and confidence. Her pale blue skin showed several recent scars from the pirate attack that had nearly killed her family. She wore what appeared to be diplomatic robes rather than military armor, but Jake could see weapons attached to her. Belt Kira had been brought to the cargo bay, under careful supervision, and the moment she saw her mother, she cried out in her native language and ran toward Zara despite the security officer's attempts to maintain control. The reunion between mother and daughter was emotional and intense as they embraced while speaking rapidly in Zalakian. Jake watched the reunion with mixed feelings of joy and concern. He was happy that Kira would be reunited with her surviving family, but worried about what this meant for his ship and crew. The translation systems were working better now, and he could understand parts of the conversation between Zara and her daughter. "You saved my child when it meant risking your own life," Zara said as she turned to face Jake directly. Her voice was strong and clear through the translation system. "Kira has told me everything about what happened aboard our destroyed ship." Jake stepped forward carefully while keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "She was dying and I couldn't leave her to die alone. Any decent person would have done the same thing." Zara's expression changed to something that looked like surprise mixed with respect. "No, Captain Morrison, not any person would have risked their life for an enemy child. What you did requires courage and honor that transcends the conflicts between our peoples." Lisa Grant moved closer to Jake, with her hand near her weapon. The security team was tense and ready for trouble, but Zara seemed genuinely peaceful in her intentions. She had come alone in a single small ship, which suggested that this was not a military operation or trap. "I want to take my daughter home," Zara continued, "but I also want to discuss something important with you about Zalakian law and customs. What you did for Kira has created obligations and relationships that both our peoples need to understand." Dr. Martinez stepped forward to join the conversation. "Commander, we've been learning about something called Veltharan from Kira. She says that Captain Morrison has earned some kind of permanent honor or status by saving her life." Zara nodded seriously. "Veltharan is the highest form of life debt in our culture. When someone risks their own life to save a Zalakian child, that person becomes bound to our family forever. They earn the right to be treated as clan family with all the privileges and responsibilities that involves." Jake felt confused by this explanation. "What exactly does that mean practically?" "It means, Captain Morrison, that you have earned a place in my family clan," Zara explained. "According to our laws and customs, you now have the right to visit our homeworld to claim land property and status among our people. But more importantly, it means that you have obligations to our family that last for your entire lifetime." Lisa Grant stepped closer with obvious concern. "Captain, this sounds like they're trying to trap you into some kind of permanent arrangement." "We don't know enough about their culture to understand what they're really demanding." Jake understood Lisa's worries, but he was also fascinated by what Zara was describing. The idea that saving Kira's life had created permanent bonds between their families was strange, but also strangely appealing. Perhaps this was an opportunity to build bridges between their warring species. "What kind of obligations are you talking about?" Jake asked. Zara smiled for the first time since arriving aboard New Horizon. "You would be expected to visit our homeworld to meet the rest of our family clan, and participate in ceremonies that honor what you did. You would be given property and status that matches your courage and sacrifice. But you would also be expected to help our family in times of need, and to serve as a bridge between our peoples." Dr. Martinez took notes rapidly as she listened to Zara's explanation. "This is fascinating from an anthropological perspective. You're describing a cultural mechanism that could potentially end conflicts between groups by creating family bonds across species lines." Jake thought about the implications of what Zara was offering. The war between humans and Zalakians had cost thousands of lives on both sides, and showed no signs of ending anytime soon. If there was a cultural pathway toward peace, it might be worth exploring regardless of personal risks. Commander Veltar, Jake said formally, I'm honored by your offer, but I need to understand what accepting this Veltharon status would mean for my crew, and my responsibilities to my own people. Zara's expression became more serious. That is a wise question, Captain. In our culture, the person who earns Veltharon becomes a bridge between families and clans. You would not lose your identity as a human or your loyalty to your own people. Instead, you would gain the ability to speak for both sides and help resolve conflicts. Before Jake could respond to Zara's explanation, alarms began sounding throughout New Horizon. Kevin Park's voice came over the ship's communication system with urgent news that changed everything about their situation. Captain, we have multiple ships approaching our position at high speed. Long-range sensors show a full human battle group led by Admiral Paul Stevens. They'll be here in less than 2 hours. Lisa Grant immediately activated her security protocols. Captain, we need to get Commander Veltar off this ship before the Admiral arrives. If Fleet Command discovers that we've been harboring enemy aliens, there will be court-martial proceedings for everyone involved. Jake felt panic rising as he realized that their peaceful meeting was about to become a dangerous military confrontation. Admiral Stevens was known for his aggressive tactics and his strong hatred of Zalakians. He would not hesitate to arrest Zara and Kira regardless of the circumstances that brought them together. Commander, you need to leave immediately, Jake told Zara. Our military leadership doesn't understand the situation here and they'll treat you as enemy prisoners. But Zara shook her head firmly. I cannot leave without completing the Veltharon ceremony, Captain. What you did for my daughter requires proper recognition according to our laws. If I leave now without honoring your sacrifice, it would be a violation of everything our culture holds sacred. There's no time for ceremonies, Lisa Grant said urgently. We have less than 2 hours before a fleet admiral arrives with enough firepower to destroy all of us. Jake looked back and forth between Zara and his security chief, while trying to figure out how to handle this impossible situation. He couldn't let Zara and Kira be captured by Admiral Stevens, who would probably use them for intelligence purposes or worse. But he also couldn't openly defy Fleet Command without being charged with treason. What exactly does the Veltharon ceremony involve? Jake asked Zara. You would need to come with us to our homeworld where our family elders could properly honor what you did, Zara explained. The ceremony takes several days and requires witnesses from both our families to make it official. Dr. Martinez looked up from her notes with an excited expression. Captain, this could be the most important anthropological opportunity in human history. If we could establish formal cultural connections with the Zalakians, it might lead to ending this war. Jake realized that he was facing a decision that would determine not just his own future, but possibly the future of human and Zalakian relations. Admiral Stevens would arrive soon with orders to continue the war, but Zara was offering a different path that might lead to peace between their species. The choice seemed impossible, but Jake knew that some decisions couldn't be made based on fear or military protocol. Sometimes being human meant taking risks for principles that transcended immediate safety and conventional wisdom. Commander Veltar, Jake said slowly, if I agree to participate in this ceremony, what guarantee do I have that I'll be treated as a guest rather than a prisoner? Zara placed her hand over her heart in what appeared to be a formal gesture. By the sacred laws of Veltharon, you would be under the protection of my family clan. Any harm done to you would be considered an attack on our honor that would be avenged across generations. Admiral Paul Stevens arrived at New Horizon exactly 2 hours after his ships had been detected on long-range sensors. His battle group consisted of 12 military vessels, including heavy cruisers and destroyer escorts that could easily overwhelm Jake's single colony ship. Jake knew that Stevens was one of the most aggressive commanders in the human fleet and had a reputation for harsh tactics against enemy forces. Jake waited in his ready room as Stevens transported aboard with a full security detail and several intelligence officers. The admiral was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes that showed no warmth or understanding for difficult situations. He had been fighting Zalakians for 3 years and viewed them as nothing more than dangerous enemies to be destroyed. Captain Morrison, Stevens said as he entered Jake's ready room without waiting for permission. You're going to explain why your ship has been off course for 3 weeks, and why you've been avoiding regular communications with Fleet Command. Jake had prepared for this confrontation, but he still felt nervous about lying to a superior officer. "Admiral, we encountered some technical difficulties with our navigation systems and had to make repairs before continuing to our colony destination." Stevens studied Jake's face carefully as if looking for signs of deception. "My intelligence reports suggest that you've had contact with enemy forces in this sector. There are energy signatures and communication traces that don't match your technical difficulties story." Before Jake could respond to Stevens' accusations, the ship's intercom system activated with Kevin Park's voice, delivering news that changed everything. "Captain, we have unknown contacts approaching our position. Multiple ships coming in fast from different directions." Stevens immediately activated his communication device to contact his battle group. "All ships, this is Admiral Stevens. Go to full alert status and prepare for enemy contact. Unknown vessels approaching our position." Jake felt his heart sink as he realized that their situation had just become much more complicated. If Zalakian military forces were approaching, it would be impossible to hide the fact that Zara and Kira were aboard New Horizon. The peaceful meeting was about to become a three-way military confrontation. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as sensors tracked multiple ships converging on their location. Kevin Park worked frantically to identify the new arrivals, while Lisa Grant coordinated with Admiral Stevens' security teams to prepare for possible combat situations. "Admiral," Kevin reported over the communication system, "the approaching ships are not Zalakian military vessels. Energy signatures suggest they're pirates or raiders, the same type that attacked the Zalakian ship we found 3 weeks ago." Admiral Stevens looked at Jake with suspicion. "What Zalakian ship, Captain? You didn't mention anything about encountering enemy vessels in your reports." Jake realized that he was running out of options to keep Zara and Kira safe while avoiding court-martial charges. The approaching pirates would force him to reveal everything about the rescue mission and the current situation aboard his ship. "Admiral, there are things about our mission that I need to explain," Jake began. 3 weeks ago, we found a damaged Zalakian ship with one survivor.
"I made the decision to rescue a child who was dying in space." Stevens' expression hardened with anger.
"You rescued an enemy alien and failed to report it to Fleet Command. Captain, that's treason, and you'll face court-martial proceedings for violating direct orders about contact with hostile forces." Before Jake could respond to Stevens' threats, the ship shook from weapons fire as the pirate vessels began their attack. The raiders had arrived in force with enough firepower to threaten both the human battle group and New Horizon simultaneously. "All hands to battle stations," Lisa Grant announced over the ship's communication system. "We are under attack by unknown raiders. This is not a drill." Admiral Stevens activated his command communications to coordinate the defense of his battle group. "All ships engage the raiders with maximum firepower. Protect the colony ship and maintain formation." Jake rushed to the bridge with Stevens following close behind. The main viewer showed at least 8 raider ships attacking from multiple directions with weapons that could penetrate standard military shields. These were the same pirates who had destroyed Kira's family ship and killed her relatives. Captain, Kevin called from the sensor station. "Commander Veltar is requesting permission to launch from her shuttle bay. She wants to join the fight against the raiders." Stevens turned to Jake with shock and fury. "Commander Veltar, you have an enemy officer aboard this ship. Captain, you're under arrest for treason and harboring enemy combatants." But before Stevens could act on his threats, Zara's voice came over the communication system, speaking in accented but clear English. "Admiral Stevens, this is Commander Zara Veltar of the Zalakian Defense Force. I request permission to assist in the defense against these raiders who murdered my family." The battle around them intensified as human and pirate ships exchanged heavy weapons fire. 2 of Stevens' destroyers had taken damage while the raiders seemed to have unlimited ammunition and no concern for their own casualties. "Admiral," Jake said urgently, "Commander Veltar is one of the best pilots in the Zalakian fleet. Her ship has weapon systems that could help us win this fight." Stevens hesitated for several seconds while explosions lit up the space around them. His military training told him never to trust enemy forces, but his tactical knowledge recognized that they needed all the help they could get against the overwhelming raider attack. "Zalakian vessel, this is Admiral Stevens," he finally responded. "You are cleared to engage the raiders but maintain distance from our fleet formation." Zara's ship launched from New Horizon and immediately joined the battle with weapons that proved devastatingly effective against the pirate vessels. Her flying skills were incredible as she maneuvered through the combat zone with precision that impressed even Stevens' experienced pilots, Dr. Martinez. had brought Kira to the bridge during the battle so the child could watch her mother fight the same raiders who had killed her father and destroyed her family ship. Kira spoke excitedly in Zalakian while pointing at her mother's ship on the main viewer. She's saying that her mother is the best warrior in their clan, Elena translated. Kira believes that Zara will destroy all the raiders who hurt their family. Jake watched in amazement as Zara's ship worked in coordination with the human fleet to eliminate the pirate threat. Her weapons and tactics complemented human military doctrine in ways that suggested their species could fight together effectively if they chose cooperation over conflict. The battle lasted for 2 hours, but the combined human and Zalakian forces eventually destroyed or drove off all the raider ships. Zara's participation had been crucial to their victory because her knowledge of pirate tactics had helped Stevens coordinate more effective attacks. Admiral. Kevin reported as the last raider ship fled the area. All hostile vessels have been destroyed or have withdrawn. We have minor damage to 3 ships, but no casualties in our fleet. Stevens looked around the bridge at Jake's crew and then at Kira, who was still watching her mother's ship on the main viewer. The Admiral's expression had changed from anger to something that looked like thoughtful consideration. Commander Veltar Stevens said over the communication system, "Return to New Horizons so we can discuss the current situation. You fought with honor today, and that deserves recognition." Jake felt hope rising as he realized that the shared battle against the pirates had changed Admiral Stevens's attitude toward Zara and possibly toward Zalakians in general. Perhaps the Admiral could be convinced that cooperation was possible between their species. When Zara returned to New Horizon, she was greeted by Kira, who ran to embrace her mother with obvious joy and relief. Stevens watched the reunion between mother and daughter with an expression that showed he was beginning to understand that Zalakians had families and emotions, just like humans. "Captain Morrison," Stevens said quietly, "you saved that child's life 3 weeks ago when you found her ship." "Yes, Admiral," Jake replied. "She was dying and I couldn't leave her to die alone in space." Stevens nodded slowly. "And today her mother helped us defeat an enemy that would have killed many of my people. Commander Veltar could have used this battle as an opportunity to attack our ships, but instead she chose to fight beside us." Jake realized that Stevens was beginning to see the bigger picture about human and Zalakian relations. The shared victory had demonstrated that their species could work together effectively when they faced common threats. "Admiral," Jake said carefully, "Commander Veltar has told me about Zalakian customs regarding the rescue of children. There might be opportunities here for building bridges between our peoples." Stevens looked at Zara, who was holding her daughter while speaking quietly in their native language. "Captain, I want to hear everything about these customs and what they might mean for ending this war." 3 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the great hall of the Zalakian homeworld preparing for the ceremony of Veltharan that would formally recognize his bond with Zara's family clan. The journey from that first rescue mission to this moment had been filled with difficult negotiations between human and Zalakian leadership, but Admiral Stevens had eventually agreed to support the cultural exchange. The Great Hall was an impressive structure built from crystalline materials that reflected light in beautiful patterns across the walls and ceiling. Hundreds of Zalakians had gathered to witness the ceremony, including family elders and military leaders who had never seen a human before. Jake wore ceremonial robes that had been specially made for him according to traditional Zalakian customs. Zara stood beside him, dressed in formal clan regalia that showed her status as a military commander and family leader. Kira was nearby wearing a smaller version of the ceremonial clothing and serving as the witness to Jake's rescue of her life. The child had grown stronger and happier during the months since their first meeting aboard New Horizon. "Captain Morrison," said Elder Korvath, the oldest member of Zara's family clan, "you stand before us today because you risked your own life to save one of our children when she was dying in the darkness of space. This act of courage and compassion has earned you the highest honor our people can bestow." Jake felt nervous as he listened to Elder Korvath speak in formal Zalakian language that was then translated into English for his understanding. The ceremony was more elaborate and meaningful than he had expected when Zara first explained the concept of Veltharan aboard New Horizon. "Do you, Captain?" "Morrison, accept the bonds of family that come with this honor," Elder Korvath continued. "Will you serve as a bridge between our peoples and work to build understanding where there has been conflict?" Jake looked around the great hall at the assembled Zalakians who were watching him with expressions of curiosity and respect. These were supposed to be his enemies according to 3 years of military programming, but they looked like people who wanted peace as much as humans did. "I accept the honor and the responsibilities that come with it," Jake replied formally. "I will work to build bridges between our peoples and to protect the innocent, regardless of which species they belong to." Elder Korvath smiled and placed a ceremonial pendant around Jake's neck that marked his new status as an honorary member of the Veltar family clan. The pendant was made from rare metals found only on the Zalakian homeworld and carved with symbols that represented courage, sacrifice, and family bonds. The ceremony continued for several hours with speeches, songs, and presentations that celebrated Jake's rescue of Kira and his new role as a cultural ambassador. Jake learned that he was the first human ever to receive Veltharan status and that his actions had inspired other Zalakian families to reconsider their attitudes toward humanity. During a break in the ceremony, Zara took Jake to a private balcony overlooking the Zalakian capital city. The architecture was beautiful and strange, with towers that spiraled into the sky and bridges that connected buildings at impossible angles. 2 suns were setting in the distance, creating colors that Jake had never seen on any human world. "Captain, I want to thank you again for what you did for Kira," Zara said as they watched the sunset together. "But I also want to explain what your presence here means for both our peoples." Jake turned to look at Zara, who had become both a friend and a cultural guide during his time on the Zalakian homeworld. "What do you mean?" "The war between our species began because of misunderstandings about honor and strength," Zara explained. "Zalakians respect courage above all other qualities, and we were waiting for humans to demonstrate that they possessed the warrior spirit we value. Your rescue of Kira proved that humans have the same courage and compassion that we admire in our own people." Jake thought about the 3 years of bloody conflict that had cost thousands of lives on both sides. "So the war happened because we didn't understand each other's cultural values?" "Exactly," Zara replied. "Both species were testing the other to see if they were worthy of respect and friendship. When you risked your life for an enemy child, you proved that humans possess the highest qualities that Zalakians value." Week later, Jake participated in another ceremony that was even more significant than his Veltharan recognition. Representatives from both human and Zalakian governments met in the Great Hall to sign the Kepler Accords, which officially ended the war between their species and established formal diplomatic relations. Admiral Stevens had traveled to the Zalakian homeworld to represent human interests in the peace negotiations. His attitude towards Zalakians had changed completely since the battle against the pirates, when he saw Zara fight alongside human forces to protect innocent lives. "Captain Morrison," Stevens said during the treaty signing ceremony, "your actions 3 months ago have led directly to this moment. By choosing to save one child's life, you've helped save thousands of lives that would have been lost if this war had continued." Jake felt proud, but also humbled by the Admiral's words. He had never intended to become a diplomat or peace negotiator when he made the split-second decision to rescue Kira from the damaged Zalakian ship. He had simply done what felt right according to his basic human values. The peace treaty included provisions for cultural exchange programs that would allow humans and Zalakians to learn from each other. Jake was appointed as Earth's first official ambassador to the Zalakian homeworld, while Zara would serve as the Zalakian ambassador to human space. 6 months after the treaty signing, Jake received a message from Sam Carter, who had been promoted to chief medical officer aboard the new joint exploration vessel Harmony. The ship was crewed by both humans and Zalakians, working together to explore unknown regions of space beyond both their territories. "Jake, you should see what's happening here," Sam's message said. "Human and Zalakian children are playing together in the ship's recreation areas and learning each other's languages. The adults are sharing knowledge about medicine, technology, and culture in ways that benefit everyone." Jake smiled as he watched the message in his embassy office overlooking the Zalakian capital. Through his window, he could see human diplomats and scientists working alongside their Zalakian counterparts in the research facilities that had been established as part of the cultural exchange programs. Kira had become something of a celebrity among both species. As the child whose rescue had sparked the peace process, she was learning English while teaching Zalakian language to human visitors. Her bright personality and natural curiosity made her an excellent ambassador for improved relations between their peoples. Ambassador Morrison, Kira said as she entered his office carrying a data pad with her latest school project. I've been writing a report about the day you saved my life, and I want to make sure I got all the details correct. Jake looked at the report Kira had written, which described the rescue mission from her perspective as a frightened child, trapped aboard a dying ship. Her account emphasized Jake's courage and compassion, but also mentioned how scared she had been until she realized that the strange human was trying to help her. This is very good, Kira, Jake said after reading her report. But you should also mention how brave your mother was when she came to find you aboard New Horizon. Kira nodded enthusiastically. I'm writing another report about that too, and about how Mama and Admiral Stevens fought together against the bad pirates who hurt our family. As Jake looked at Kira's bright face, he reflected on how much had changed since that day when he found her dying in space. A single act of compassion had led to friendship between former enemies and opened up possibilities for cooperation that neither species had imagined before the evening news. Broadcasts on both human and Zalakian worlds featured stories about successful joint missions and cultural celebrations that brought their peoples together. Children of both species were learning that their supposed enemies were actually potential friends who shared many of the same values and dreams. Jake walked out onto his embassy balcony as the twin suns set over the Zalakian capital. In the garden below, he could see human and Zalakian children playing together, while their parents watched with expressions of hope and wonder. The sight would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year earlier when their species were locked in bitter warfare. A year later, the first joint colony was established on a planet that both species could inhabit comfortably. Human technology combined with Zalakian knowledge created settlements that were more advanced and beautiful than either species could have built alone. The colony was named New Hope in honor of the possibilities that had emerged from one human's decision to save an alien child. Jake often thought about the moment when he had chosen to give up his oxygen supply to keep Kira alive aboard that damaged ship. He had acted on instinct and basic human decency, without considering the larger implications of his choice. But that simple act of compassion had changed the course of galactic history and proved that individual, moral choices could have consequences, far beyond what anyone might expect. The war between humans and Zalakians was now remembered as a tragic misunderstanding that had been resolved through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to see former enemies as potential family. Jake Morrison, the human captain who had